Thank you for having me. Everyone from BLF, hi. And it's kind of, sorry, you were the moderator, but I'm just going to quickly say that it's been thrice since I've been mistaken for a volunteer. So I'm very happy to be here. Just at the very outset, I'm 32, not 19. And it's very nice to be here at the first literature fest that I'm speaking at. So for all the young ones who have made the mistake of hearing me again, I apologize, like a few familiar faces. But for the others, I'll try to keep this as informative as possible. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have with us Rishabh. As you heard, he's the founder of IIMUN, which is not just India, but the world's largest youth-run movement. Just let that sink in. And apart from that, in his spare time, he also is an avid chess player, nationally ranked, writes books, runs his own business. He's an entrepreneur, travels, and he finds time for many other activities as well. Here I am unable to find time for my own fitness. Amongst many other things, Rishabh is a great time management expert and also the author of the newly released and bestseller, Nothing But the Truth. In this book, Rishabh goes through his journey of meeting some of India's most powerful people, ranging all the way from Mr. Mohan Bhagwat to Mr. Rahul Gandhi, to the late President Pranab Mukherjee and the late first CDS of the country, General Bipin Rawat. So that's why we have Rishabh here, and we'll start off with a couple of quick questions where maybe he can take us through his journey and a bit about his thought processes about centrism, a concept which I am really excited to discuss about today. And then we'll open it up for you guys to ask us questions. So Rishabh, Nothing But the Truth is the journey of meeting some of India's most powerful people, as you mentioned. So how did you start on this journey? What made you start this journey? Like, where did it originate from?
Right, so like I said, firstly, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Very many of those who've been at the organization have been here before me. So it's very nice to actually get an opportunity to come here and speak. The foreword of this book is written by somebody who I just saw next door, and I think many of you must have come to hear him as well, Shashi Tharoor. And he writes the foreword to the book, and the reason for writing the book actually is something that is deeply personal to me, because I feel that a lot of kids who worked at this organization that I run called IIMUN today are in different positions of power. Some are young elected members of government, and these people belong to different political parties. So these different political parties actually have very strong ideologies. And because they have very strong ideologies, it's very often that you absolutely love Rahul Gandhi or you absolutely despise him. You love Mohan Bhagwat or you absolutely despise him. You think Karan Johar is a platform for nepotism or you absolutely love Karan and all his movies. As somebody who didn't have the baggage of being known, just writing to these people and asking them to come and participate at these events that we organize in the foundation I run, gave me an opportunity to actually see these people firsthand. In this, I kind of realized that there's a Sanskrit Shubhashita that comes to mind, and that's the first page of the book. It goes by Amantram Aksharam Nasti, Nasti Mulamanuksham, Ayogya Purusho Nasti, Yojakas Tatra Durlabha, which basically translates into that there is no man whom you can't learn from. The issue is that there is the lack of a good teacher. I clearly can't be a teacher because thrice I've been mistaken for a volunteer, and I'm very happy that I am. But the idea being that I can share some anecdotes from my experiences with these people. And in the chapter titled Pappu Ki Pariksha, when I read it out to him, he laughed, and so did everybody in his staff. And when I read out Nagpur Ki Santre with Mohan Bhagwat, at that juncture, even he laughed and he said that, you can point out the mistakes in a person without condescending the human being. In this book, I write about things that are positive and negative, both about some of India's most powerful people. Till now, there's been no lawsuit on the publishers. and there's been no problem for us. The idea is to try to say that there is something to learn from everyone. That's the main message of the book. And the second thing about the book, and the reason why the book, is because of the fact that in our country, a lot of things happen with Sifarish. In fact, we were just having a conversation before this. He said, Rishabh, if you were in conversation with Dr. Tharoor, or if he would have put in a small word, you would have had 20,000 people here, not 20 people. And this entire organization for the last 13 years that we've built, which is unknown, and which we prefer that it remains unknown, has had everyone that you could possibly think of in terms of power and position come in and speak. I believe that you don't need a surname in order to create impact or reach out to people of prominence. I think it's very simple. If you really have merit, then people will look at that merit and then they will value you. So this book is testimony to over 20,000 young people who've created who've been on some incredible journeys, and they've managed to get people from across the board which normally wouldn't have been in the same room. Like in the same room, I've seen a Mohan Bhagwat and Dr. Tharoor talk to each other. They come from different political parties, ideologies. A Sadhguru and a Sri Sri Ravi Shankar talk to each other, which normally in public domain would not happen. So things like that, which a 19-year-old has made possible. And that's what the message of Nothing But the Truth is. And we unequivocally, and I'm unabashed in saying this, that we call them out saying that what is the stance of the RSS on mental health? What is the problems with Mr. Gandhi and the Congress Party that we see as young people? And in that, at the end of the day, they've yet taken it in a positive light. So this is what Nothing But the Truth is, and the book is. I'm sorry for the longish answer.
I think that put a lot of the book in context for everyone here. And, just taking a question out of what you mentioned, you spoke about how, we can talk about people and their ideology and criticize them without belittling them. So that's really brilliant, and not too many people can do that. Now, since we spoke about these people, is there one common thing that you found in all of them, one quality that you see is common amongst them? Because, well, we all know that, they're all leaders in some or the other format. But apart from the leadership skills, is there some particular characteristic or some trait or some drive that you saw which is common in all of them?
That's fantastic, because many people will think that, there's nothing that is common between these people. But exactly. Personally, I felt that the two things that are common. One, it's great to be young and to be perceived as young. All of those people who are perceived as young and approach these people, I don't think they shove you aside. The fact that everyone from Mr. Gandhi to the Prime Minister to across the board, not politics, but Bollywood, all these walks of life, they will be receptive to a 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old. So that's one thing that I've seen, that they're very receptive, even if it takes sometimes 10 years for them to be receptive. Like a small anecdote that I'll quickly share is, everybody, of course, would have heard of Karan Johar. But I kept writing to Karan. Karan was from the same school, the same college in Bombay. And I kept writing to Karan because for me, he was somebody that was always spoken of in school and college, right? Teachers have this habit of speaking about their favorite student. Karan was one of those favorite students. And right from childhood, I always had this fascination that I want to meet Karan on merit, not a soiree, not a social gathering, but I want to meet him on merit. And so I kept writing to him on the number that I found on a website, saying, Karan Johar ko likhte hai. And the friends that I had as a part of the first team, and there were more friends and less people who worked with me, they said, Rishabh, we're not talking about the watchman Karan, we're talking about Karan Johar. He gets almost thousands of messages every day and so many emails. He won't respond to you. So he didn't respond to us. So then we went to his office. We went to the Dharma Productions office. We went there and we gave a letter. Karan took the letter. Karan's peer took the letter. Nothing happened with the letter. Next year we did the same thing. The year after we did the same thing. For 9 consecutive years, we went outside his residence and his office every single year on multiple occasions. Kabhi Diwali hai to kabhi Holi, kabhi Christmas or something else. And we said we want to give this letter to Karan. eventually, 10 years later, the message that he read, thank you, Amish, for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, huge round of applause, Amish Tripathi. Suddenly, the gathering has got some stature with you coming in. Thank you. They were looking at me, they were wondering, saying, who's this guy? But the 10th year, yes, sorry, thank you. But the 10th year, and when I wrote to Karan on the 10th year, at that juncture, Karan read the message. He read the message and he responded, saying, oh my God, I have not responded to you for 10 years. Who are you? Please come and see me. I went and I met him, Arup. I went and I met him, and Karan looked at me and he said, but aren't you the same Rishabh who was dating that girl from Bollywood? So I said, yes. So he said, why didn't you ask her to introduce Bollywood? As you would know, is a small community. Much like Literature Fest, as I've come to realize. And everybody knows everybody. He said, why didn't you ask so-and-so to introduce you? It would have been so easy, it would have automatically happened. So I said, no, I wanted you to see this on merit. So he saw it on merit, he liked it on merit. Or he just had a lot of sympathy, and he felt very bad. But every 3 months since then to date, Karan has come without any cameras, without any bandwagon of people, without any entourage, so to say, and has always spoken as a Ayaman, just like an Amish has, just like a Shashi Tharoor has, just like all of these people have. And they don't value me as much as they value the methodology of reaching out to them. There is no reference, there is no sifarish. And that's what the book talks about. It talks about the fact that as an ordinary young person, or just as an ordinary person, you can make things happen. You don't need a surname. And without a surname, if you can make it happen, then that's what Young India is all about. Sorry.
Speaking of surnames, you've written about, again, I'm harping on the fact, some of the most powerful men in the country. Did you face any challenge, or was there any pressure from any side of the aisle to change what you wrote about them? Did you face any sort of pressure or any push to maybe, do some sort of a whitewash of their image? Did you face any such push from any side? And again, you don't need to mention the side, but how you dealt with it.
No, see, I'm not seeking a member of parliament seat, so I'm very happy to say it as it comes. But the idea that when you title a chapter Pappu Ki Pariksha, or when you title a chapter Nagpur Ki Santre, and if you give it to people who don't know you, then the first thing that they think about you is that this guy is completely mad. Or he's somehow related to Subramaniam Swamy. And I write about Dr. Swamy in the book as well, and I've called it The Cost of Truth with Dr. Subramaniam Swamy. But when you read the chapter, and I implore you, if you do get your hands on this book, you will see that, as Amish and I were talking about, that you don't need to be bitter in order to point out a flaw, or you do not need to be overtly profusive in your praise when it comes to pointing out the positives in somebody. Like I said, that every person has good and bad. The only problem is that we see them in one light. We forget that people are just different shades of grey. Not that I'm advocating 50 shades of grey. But what I'm basically trying to say is that we forget that there exists both yin and yang in human beings. And that's what the book talks about. That's what the book is. In the book, right through, whether it was striking a chord with A.R. Rahman, or whether it is Karan's chapter where we talk about nepotism, and we talk about how, yes, he does give a preference to people who he knows. I don't think anybody who's read the chapter has even flinched once. They've not said anything about it. And the good part is that they yet talk to me. So only when they stop talking to me will I realize that this was far too much. But up until now, the people who've been mentioned in the book have not really complained about it. So nobody's particularly asked for any change in the book.
That's heartening to hear that everyone is happy with the truth. So moving on to...
So I must add one part, I'm sorry, where Sarsanga Chalak of the RSS said, and I know this is recorded, but I say it. He said, "आपने जो सच है वो जैसे है ऐसे लिख दिया है." तो कोई लोगों को ये बहुत कड़वा लगेगा. मुझे तो ठीक है, but दूसरे लोगों को कड़वा लग सकता है. So I said, "Sir, if you are not feeling bad, if somebody else that I've written about in the book is not feeling bad, but if society is going to feel bad about it, it is not my lookout. My thing is that I've seen good in you, and I see that there are certain things that perhaps can be done differently from not my experience, but somebody else's experience that I have learned from. I've spoken about it in that manner, and luckily, most of them have met me in the past, so they know that I speak only with deference and I do not speak to dismiss somebody. And like I said, nobody's seeking a member of parliament. We made member of parliament, so we're not seeking a member of parliament. So the idea is that to keep it like that. Company to chhod, India mate kaipan samajh chhe. Do you understand anything about India? So I said, what is there to understand about India? So he said, tell me which are the cities you've been to in India. So I very proudly, Arup said, Bombay, Delhi and Goa. He corrected me, he said, is Mumbai, Goa you go and party with your friends, and Delhi you've been once. And then he asked me a question, he said, you know so much about international relations, tell me, which is the first book on foreign policy that's ever written? So I very confidently said, The Art of War by Sun Tzu. So he held my rather long hair back then, and he held it and he said, Rishabh, there's a guy called Chanakya, who combs his hair, who has long hair but combs his hair, and he's written a book called Arthashastra. He gave me a 2-hour lecture. The 2-hour lecture went from one ear and went out of the other ear. Doting grandfather, so I listened to the lecture. After the lecture, he said, I know you're not going to read the book, but I hope someday you do. That same day, that same year, President Obama came to India. President Obama was meeting all these important people, and then he decided to meet 100 young people, 99 very smart teenagers, and one over-smart teenager. I walked inside the room, and for me, Obama was like, I'd learned everything about the West more and less about our country. So for me, Obama was a charismatic speaker, plus somebody that I always wanted to meet. So I walked in first, much before time, Rishabh written out here, and he came inside and he shook our hands and he said, Rishabh, nice to meet you. I'd say the same to you, and it wouldn't make much of a difference, but when your role model basically comes and shakes your hand and you're 18 and 19 and impressionable, it'll make all the difference. And then he started his speech, and he was, of course, playing to the gallery, plus he loved India, I'd like to believe. He said, the world has so much to learn from India. So I said, and then he gave an example from the Arthashastra. It's a public speech at St. Xavier's College. I said, ye to Dadaji ne bola tha. I went back home and I told my grandfather, saying, did you tell him this? My grandfather looked at me and said, Rishabh, don't be a fool. If we knew him, we wouldn't be running operations in a few countries, we'd be running operations in 193 nations across the world. So I went and I picked up the Arthashastra, which was right behind, after all the Harry Potters of the world. The last book on the shelf was Arthashastra. I took the Arthashastra for the first time, I read it. Please don't ask me a question yet, I don't understand it. But I read the Arthashastra when I was 18, then read the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Back then we didn't have Amish. Therefore it wasn't very simple. But now it's very simple. And then we read all of these books and I kind of realized that there's so much to India that we don't know about. And I'm not talking about Modi's Bharat or Nehru's India. I'm talking about Modi's India and Nehru's Bharat that we don't know so much about. And because we don't know so much about and we're only fed a particular narrative, that my grandfather looked at me and he said, there should be less, because I liked Harry Potter, and for the ones who've read Harry Potter, he said, there should be less muggles in the country and that we should have more wizards. So that's where we started this organization called IMN. The purpose of this organization, which I've written briefly in the book, is in order to teach a generation of adolescents to be less like me and to understand a little more of our country. And in that, like I said, the idea is to discover India. In that, it is also to have both Shashi Tharoor and also to have Subramaniam Swami. It's in order to have Sri Sri Ravi Shankar and also to have Sadhguru. the idea is to try to get these people to come and speak. And in that process, I've been fortunate enough in order to meet some of them, some who've become friends and mentors, and some who've briefly tolerated my sense of humor. But all in all, people who've taught me a lot. And that I look to pen down in this book, such that you are able to tell how they perceive India and how they actually are. It's an unfiltered, unbiased, no holds barred book, which, had it been released the way I had been advised by some of my friends and well-wishers, it would have been trending at #1 across the country. But I chose to release it in the way that we release everything at IMON, in a nondescript manner, without any sifarish. And thanks to Arup and thanks to places such as BLF, it's made its way to the bestseller list in many lists across the country. So.